do if someone you trusted with your life turned against you? Someone who knew your every fear, earned your trust, and then used it to destroy you. This is the story of betrayal, heartbreak, and murder when the person closest to you becomes your worst enemy. Mary Jayne Collins thought she had found stability, a sense of peace after escaping her past. She had moved on, believing that her life was finally her own. But when Dawayland Hurst, a man she had come to trust, entered her world, everything changed. His past, filled with violence and anger, collided with hers in a deadly way. On October 4th, 2024, Mary Jayne Collins was found dead in her Seabrook, Texas apartment, leaving her children without a mother. Who could have murdered this young woman? And why was she targeted? As the investigation unfolded, the shocking truth began to emerge. Revenge was the motive, and Mary Jayne was caught in the crossfire. Today, we'll explore how trust, deceit, and a thirst for vengeance led to a devastating loss. In Seabrook, Texas, a small town where the pace of life was slow and families lived close to one another, a quiet tragedy was unfolding. It was here that Mary Jayne Collins and Dawayland Earnest Hurst crossed paths in a story of love, trust, betrayal, and ultimately, murder. Mary Jayne Collins, only 23 years old, was a dedicated mother to 2 young boys. Life hadn't been easy for Mary, but she had always held on to hope. After breaking up with her ex, Michael King, when he was sentenced to prison, Mary hoped for a fresh start. Mary's hope for a better future had led her to start a new chapter in her life. She had met Dawayland, a man she believed could provide the stability she longed for after her turbulent past with Michael. However, little did she know the man she trusted was driven by a dangerous need for revenge. Dawayland Earnest Hurst, 22, was a man whose heart was clouded by grief. In 2020, his half-brother Dawayland triplet was tragically murdered, and the man convicted of the crime was none other than Mary Jayne's ex, Michael King. The loss of Dawayland left Dawayland with an overwhelming hunger for justice that he believed could only be served through revenge. Dawayland's need for revenge began to consume him, leading him to form a relationship with Mary. On the surface, he appeared to be a caring, supportive partner, someone who was offering Mary the stability and comfort she had longed for. But the truth was, he was using her as a pawn in his plan to get closer to Michael, the man he held responsible for his half-brother's death. Even after their breakup, Michael's influence over Mary's life was still present. Despite his imprisonment, Mary had allowed Michael to remain in contact with their son through video calls. She wanted her son to have a connection with his father, even if the circumstances weren't ideal. This decision, though made out of love for her child, would unknowingly place Mary directly in the path of Dawayland's vengeful plan. Do you think Mary made the right choice in allowing Michael to maintain contact with their son, given the circumstances? What would you have done differently? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your opinions. For Dawayland, Michael's ongoing relationship with Mary was his entry point. He saw this as his opportunity to get closer to Michael, to manipulate the situation in his favor, and to enact the revenge he had long been plotting. But the true nature of Dawayland's feelings for Mary was not what it seemed. He wasn't there for love, but for a much darker purpose. Seabrook, Texas, was the kind of town where everyone knew each other. It was peaceful, the type of place where children played outside, and neighbors shared casual conversations. The Teakwood apartment complex where Mary lived with her sons was just like any other suburban neighborhood, quiet, safe, and unassuming. But beneath this calm surface, things were starting to unravel. Mary had hoped that Seabrook would be a fresh start for her and her children, a place where they could heal and grow. But the man she had chosen to trust, Dawayland, would turn everything upside down. Do you think Mary had any idea how dangerous Dawayland really was? It's hard to believe, but sometimes the people we trust the most have hidden agendas. Do you think it's possible to see these red flags before it's too late? The calm of Seabrook, Texas, was shattered one quiet morning. But in the weeks before that fateful day, the signs of trouble had already started to show. Mary Jayne Collins, a young mother of 2, had begun to confide in her closest friends about unsettling things that were happening in her life. At first, it seemed like she was just struggling with the typical challenges of life. But things weren't as they seemed. Mary started to express fears for her safety. She spoke of strange incidents, moments when Dawayland seemed to change, becoming more possessive and even aggressive. She would confide in her friends about the bruises she had, even showing them the bite marks and scratches she had suffered. But despite these warnings, Mary didn't leave him. Why? Was it because she believed he would change? Or was she simply afraid to walk away, afraid of what might happen next? It's a question that no one could answer, not even her closest friends. By all appearances, Mary trusted Dawayland. She invited him into her home, into her life, believing that he could offer her the stability she so desperately wanted for her children. But this trust, this hope, would be the very thing that would cost her everything. How many times have you heard someone say, "I never saw it coming"? But when you look back, there are always signs. Do you think Mary saw the signs but couldn't face them? Or was she just trying to keep things together for her kids? Share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes we don't realize how much we trust someone until it's too late. If this story moved you, or if you think it's important for more people to understand the dangers of revenge and abuse, please consider liking this video so that it can reach more people, and also subscribe to the channel. This case is just one example of how trust can be manipulated and how, at times, people we believe are helping us can be the very ones who hurt us. Then came October 4th, 2024. It was a normal morning, at least it seemed so at first. Mary Jayne's life was about to be violently ripped apart, and no one knew it yet. The events that unfolded in her apartment that day would leave a trail of heartbreak, confusion, and disbelief. At approximately 11:30 a.m., a call came in to the Seabrook Police Department. The body of Mary Jayne Collins had been discovered inside her apartment at the Teakwood Apartments. Her 2 children, fortunately, were unharmed but left shaken by what they had witnessed. They were too young to fully understand what had happened, but they would be forever marked by it. When the police arrived at the scene, they didn't immediately know what they were walking into. There were no obvious signs of forced entry, no visible struggle. But the apartment was a crime scene, and it was clear that something brutal had occurred. Mary Jayne had been stabbed, a single fatal blow to her upper body. There was blunt force trauma, 2 marks of violence too intense to ignore. But who could have done such a thing? What could have led to her death? Imagine the confusion, the questions. It was a puzzle. And the more they dug, the harder it became to piece it all together. Who would hurt this young mother? Why would anyone do this to her? The chilling scene was only the beginning. It would take days, maybe even weeks, to piece together the events leading to Mary's tragic death. Mary's body was discovered by a close friend. The discovery was horrifying. Mary Jayne, the woman they all knew as strong, caring, and full of hope, was lying lifeless. Her friends had no answers, only shock. And so, the investigation began. The police had to figure out who had been in Mary's life, who might have been capable of such violence, and why. The apartment was locked up, quiet, but full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. What would you do if you found someone you cared about in a situation like this? Would you immediately know who was responsible? Would it be easy to trust anyone around you? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes it's the closest people to us who end up betraying us the most. As the investigation unfolded, the first clue that pointed to Dawayland Earnest Hurst came through Mary's phone records. She had made a strange call the night of her death, one that was brief but chilling. The call had been to none other than Michael King, her ex, the father of her son. And on the other end of that call was Dawayland, taunting Michael, his words laced with bitterness and anger. What was happening in that apartment that night? The more the police pieced together the pieces of evidence, the more they realized that Dawayland was at the center of it all. The more investigators dug, the clearer the picture became. Dawayland had used his relationship with Mary to get closer to Michael, to avenge the murder of his half-brother. The tension between Dawayland and Michael was more than just personal. It was a deadly game of manipulation, betrayal, and retribution. And Mary was caught in the middle, the unwitting pawn. The investigation into Mary's death grew more intense as detectives reviewed surveillance footage, witness statements, and 10 digital evidence. Each new piece of evidence painted a darker and more chilling picture. The question that lingered in the air was clear: who was responsible for her death? The answers were beginning to emerge, but they were far from satisfying. What would you do if you found yourself caught in the middle of such a dangerous situation? Would you be able to escape? Or would you become a victim of the people around you? It's a frightening thought, isn't it? As the investigation progressed, Dawayland Earnest Hurst's name came up again and again. His involvement seemed more than just circumstantial, it seemed undeniable. And as more details came to light, the realization hit: Mary Jayne's death was the tragic result of a deadly quest for revenge, one that had been planned for months, if not years. Imagine you're piecing together the fragments of a puzzle, but just when you think you've got it all figured out, something unexpected shifts everything into a new light. That's exactly what happened during the investigation into Mary Jayne Collins' murder. What seemed like a straightforward case began to unravel with shocking twists, leading investigators down paths they never anticipated. It all started with a chilling turn of events, something that would change the direction of the investigation forever. It was a Facebook post that first caught the attention of Mary Jayne's friends, a post that would set off a chain of events no one was prepared for. It was a message from what appeared to be Michael King's mother, asking if anyone could check on Mary Jayne. She hadn't heard from her, and something didn't sit right. The post wasn't a casual remark. It felt like an urgent cry for help. This raised red flags for Mary's friends. They knew something was wrong, but they couldn't put their finger on what exactly had happened. One friend immediately called the police, expressing concern about Dawayland Hurst. She had heard rumors, seen signs, and wasn't sure what to think. But she was certain of one thing: Dawayland had a gun, and that was enough to send everyone into panic mode. And then came the video. This is where things took a darker turn. Mary Jayne's grandmother received a video from Dawayland himself, a chilling clip that sent shivers down her spine. In the footage, Dawayland is seen pointing a gun at the camera, speaking directly to Mary's family and saying, "I'm going to kill Mary Jayne." Can you even imagine the terror that must have swept over her grandmother as she watched that video? This wasn't just a threat. This was a man who had made up his mind, and his words were about to become a horrifying reality. The investigation into Mary Jayne Collins' tragic death had been fraught with mystery and twists, but the arrest of Dawayland Earnest Hurst was just the beginning of a story that had many more shocking revelations yet to come. While the community of Seabrook, Texas, waited for justice, no one could predict just how deep the case would go or what new details would emerge. For weeks after Mary Jayne's death, Dawayland Earnest Hurst remained on the run, his whereabouts unknown to authorities. The investigation into her murder had stalled, and the community was left in limbo, unsure of whether the person responsible would ever be caught. But then, a breakthrough came. On October 28, 2024, after weeks of searching, Dawayland was arrested in Texas City, Texas. The arrest itself was dramatic, a culmination of weeks of police work and piecing together a digital trail that would ultimately tie him to Mary Jayne's murder. Once in custody, the investigation into the events leading up to Mary Jayne's murder became clearer. Dawayland's involvement wasn't a spontaneous act of anger, it was a calculated crime that had been in the works for months. Dawayland had met Mary Jayne in June 2024, not out of love, but as part of a plan to exact revenge on her ex, Michael King, who was responsible for the death of Dawayland's half-brother, Dawayland triplet, in 2020. Mary, in her vulnerability and desire for a fresh start, had trusted Dawayland, and he had used that trust to manipulate his way into her life. He had preyed on her need for stability and love, while secretly waiting for the right moment to strike. The day of Mary Jayne's death, October 4th, 2024, was the culmination of this carefully crafted plan. Dawayland had been living in the apartment complex with Mary Jayne, where he waited for the perfect opportunity. In the hours before her death, Mary received a disturbing FaceTime call from Michael King, who was still incarcerated at the time. Dawayland answered the call, taunting King, before slapping King's young son during the video. as Mary Jayne begged him to stop. This was just one more sign of the emotional and psychological abuse she had endured at Dawayland's hands. But by the time that call ended, the worst was still to come. Hours later, Mary Jayne was found dead, her children left to witness the horrors of the violence that unfolded inside their home. With Dawayland arrested, the legal battle was just beginning. In the days following his arrest, the charges against him piled up. He was charged with the murder of Mary Jayne Collins. The case quickly gained national attention, with many wondering what his defense might look like in the courtroom. This case serves as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers in relationships, how trust can be manipulated, and how grief can morph into something far more destructive. Mary Jayne was a victim of both, caught in a cycle of abuse and manipulation that she never saw coming. Her death is a tragedy not just because of the violence that took her life, but because it represents the lengths to which one person was willing to go to destroy another in the name of revenge. Dawayland's obsession with his brother's death became the justification for taking an innocent life. And while justice may be on the horizon, it's a painful reminder that sometimes, even when a killer is caught, the real damage has already been done. The murder of Mary Jayne Collins has left a mark on the small town of Seabrook, Texas, one that will not easily fade. This case is more than just a tragic loss, it's a story that reflects the hidden dangers of trust, the depth of betrayal, and the destructive power of revenge. What happened to Mary Jayne is not an isolated incident, but a painful reminder of how quickly a life can be taken, and how the people we trust most can sometimes become the ones who hurt us the most. For Mary Jayne's children, the impact is even more profound. Their world has been torn apart by the brutal and senseless loss of their mother. They will never fully recover from the trauma of losing her in such a violent and heart-wrenching way. Their future is forever changed, as they must now grow up without the love and care of the person who gave them life. The emotional scars left behind by Mary's death are something that time can never heal completely. And no matter how the legal proceedings unfold, her absence will always be felt. For the community, the questions surrounding this case will linger for years. What drives someone to commit such an act of violence? How can trust be so easily betrayed? And how can love turn into something so destructive? As more details continue to emerge, the shadows of this case will continue to shape the lives of those who knew Mary Jayne, as well as those who followed her story. The ripple effects of this crime will be felt far and wide, a constant reminder of the complexity of human relationships and the devastating consequences when things go wrong. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on this case. What do you think the true motive was? Was Dawayland's desire for revenge really the driving force behind Mary Jayne's murder? Or is there something else we missed? What drove him to such lengths? Did you notice any other signs or clues that we didn't cover? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It's important that we keep this conversation going, as the more we understand about these situations, the better we can protect ourselves and those we care about. If you're interested in hearing more about this case or similar stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you won't miss out on any future updates or chilling true crime cases. We have plenty more stories to share, each more mysterious and heartbreaking than the last. If you find these cases as compelling as we do, subscribing is the best way to stay informed. In our next video, we'll be diving into another chilling mystery, a case that remains unsolved, haunting the family to this day. The details are murky, and the truth has yet to be uncovered. You won't want to miss it. We'll take a deep look at the evidence, the twists, and the unanswered questions that continue to plague this case. Stay tuned, and be sure to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the shocking revelations that are still waiting to be uncovered. Thank you for following Mary Jayne's story with us. We'll keep you updated on any new developments in the case, and continue to bring you more gripping true crime stories. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and never stop seeking the truth.